Hey everyone, it's ENDYMION, and Space Marine 2 has been crushing the gaming community for a few days now. How are you all enjoying it? I hope you're all having fun so far. This is one of those rare releases where everything seems to have come together in a way that will just make the brand even stronger in the future. Of course, there's still naysayers, like some people still demanding there be female Space Marines in the game, or some other people trying to bait and say that Space Marine 2 is actually secretly woke, which, yeah, I'll explain that later on in the video. And I also want to look into one website that really wants Henry Cavill to play a certain someone from the Warhammer universe, so we'll explore that as well. Firstly, the good news. Space Marine 2 has sold over 2 million copies already, which is a massive achievement for Saber Interactive and Focus Entertainment.
Brothers and sisters of the Imperium, this is Lieutenant Titus, coming to you with a message of gratitude and honor. 2 million warriors have joined the fight for Space Marine 2 already. We thank you. You are not only players, you are warriors of the Imperium and heroes to the Ultramarines. For the Emperor! For 2 million brothers and sisters!
The game is also still enjoying well over 100,000 players on Steam alone. Remember that the game is cross-play enabled, so the actual number of Space Marines that are ripping and tearing is likely far higher once PlayStation and Xbox user numbers are included as well. But this is still amazing. In less than a few days, Space Marine 2 has garnered around 1/4 the entire player base that has bought Helldivers 2. And like I've said in other videos, I do think if they manage this game correctly, that Space Marine 2 could become the next Helldivers 2-like experience. I do think they need to add less story-driven missions to the game in the future and opt for a more of a horde mode objective-based mission structure instead. Because while having story in, say, operations is a good idea, the truth is that what will actually be replayable would be something where it's more player objective driven like Helldivers does. But of course, using Space Marine 2's unique strengths like the swarm tech that allows thousands of alien freaks to exist at any given time. The roadmap did get released as well. It says that we'll be getting a new enemy in each season, which is a bit confusing to me. Does that mean a new enemy type within each existing enemy faction, or does it mean a brand new enemy faction entirely? I wager that it means just a single new enemy, but I don't personally think that's enough to satiate the player base in my opinion in the long term. I do think another thing Space Marine 2 has to address sooner than later is its enemy variety. Because in a game where you're constantly killing things, the dynamic of enemy versus player is far more important in this game than ever before. It'll be interesting to see how Saber guides this game through its lifespan and we see exactly what gets made for it and so on. I truly do hope that a third game doesn't take another 10 plus years to happen either. But also, it seems that Space Marine 2 has entered the upper echelon of Steam's most played and bought games as well. So all of this is just really good news all around. I mean, even writers who are somewhat inconsistent like Paul Tassi of Forbes, he even recently had an article where he said that Space Marine 2 has the best campaign he's played this entire generation. And he couldn't help but praise the game's story, characters, and world, even though he was playing it not knowing anything about what was going on in it. So I think it's safe to say that Space Marine 2 is a hit, a mega hit if you will. And what was noticed by me especially was that when it comes this year, besides the usual sellers like your sports games, which always sell regardless of their quality, largely speaking, there hasn't been many big Western-made games this year that have actually done well. Yes, Helldivers is one of those games, but it's also failing a lot too and has lost over 95% of its player base since release due to many moronic decisions. Take this article from Games Radar titled, Helldivers 2 dev admits there's been a disconnect between Arrowhead and what players want. We want to make the game more fun. This article just came out yesterday and Helldivers devs over at Arrowhead said that they have a 60-day action plan in place to make the game more fun to entice more players to come back to the game. The reason why I'm bringing up Helldivers here is to show you that this is the fate that can quickly happen to any always online multiplayer game. What they've done to lose their players so quickly is not unique to just them. I mean, Destiny 2 has also lost the majority of its player base as well. And Space Marine 2 is strategically falling into a place where a lot of its competition right now is fumbling the bag in every way. which is why having 2 million players for a game like this so quickly is a very big deal. And I don't think enough people are praising Saber for what they've done here, because like I was saying, when it comes to Western releases outside of your sports games, Helldivers when it released, and now Space Marine 2, what has actually done well from Western studios this year so far? The majority of the heavy hitters have been Asian-made games, we know this already. Sure, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 will sell gangbusters because it's Call of Duty, so I think that one goes without saying in the future, but we've mostly only seen failures and busts across the board when it comes to the West this year. I think more than ever we're seeing that the gaming industry can in fact exist without a strong Western game developer presence. I mean, outside of Helldivers at its peak, or Space Marine 2 now I guess, the majority of what I've played this year has been games that were not made in the West. I think the most Western-made games I played this year were the Batman Arkham games again, but they're not representative of the current era of quality that we're in now. They're relics from a much better industry in my opinion. I think the West is getting their cheeks clapped left and right by everybody else, and this is why Space Marine 2 succeeding as it has is a really good thing to see. Because yes, Saber is a Western studio, so this is a rare win in 2024 for that side of the gaming industry. But that just used to be the norm. The West used to dominate the industry. We all remember the PS3 and 360 era. There were so many great quality Western-made epics back then, and then these days, however, they've become far more interested in political nonsense and identity mumbo-jumbo over giving people what they really want. A great comparison to show the dichotomy of the West is to take Space Marine 2 and then place it up against Concord. In its early access period, Space Marine 2 had well over 1000% more players than Concord had in its official release. And we already know how Concord failed so badly that the game was taken offline 2 weeks following its release, and Sony has refunded everyone too. Obviously, Space Marine 2 will not be taken offline in a week or anything like that, which thank God for that, because the game is genuinely good. But I think Space Marine 2 truly does exemplify what the Western game industry used to be capable of making compared to what they seem to be wanting to make instead these days. The whole game just kind of feels like an anomaly. I mean, you have strong male characters, there's no activism, or any allegories with the story being tied to nonsense like an activist group or anything else. It could have been really easy for Saber to make the main villain of Space Marine 2 somehow an allegory for Donald Trump. I mean, we have an entire game that pretty much does that already, and it's called Dustborn, and look how badly that's gone because of it. The truth is simply that Space Marine 2 proves that what players want above everything else is just good old-fashioned gaming and games that respect a player's time and money. It really is that simple, and I do think parts of the industry are starting to learn the hard way very fast that they can't keep this up forever. Gamergate 2, for all the naysaying against it, has proven that players absolutely have the power to shape the industry. And I think that publishers and dev studios are realizing that the players truly do not need these dev studios or publishers when it comes to playing games anymore. Look at Ubisoft, they're falling apart over there, and the share price, it just keeps falling lower every single hour it seems. I think we've finally reached a point where the players are in control of where the industry is headed, and it's wild to see. When devs make stuff people enjoy, we celebrate and we buy it. Obviously, Space Marine 2 is proof of that already. And like when that one Concord artist said if we keep rejecting their games, eventually we'll have nothing to play, well, that's not true at all. Because I have a legendary amount of backlog to play through already. I'm currently playing Astrobot and loving my time with that game right now, which is a Japanese game obviously. Not to mention the amount of other games I still got to play. I mean, I bought Trails Through Daybreak, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, man. I bought that day one, and I still haven't played it yet. I even have Like a Dragon Ishin 2 and Visions of Mana and more as well. The entire Western gaming industry could collapse upon itself right this instant, and I would still have plenty to play for years to come. Thankfully, games like Space Marine 2 have been rejecting the moronic woke agendas of the industry, and because of that, they're actually swimming in money as well. As Fandom Wire says in their article titled, "The game also doesn't lack in women. Hating Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 for lack of diversity is hard to fathom." So some players, or maybe activists, let's be real, have been saying that they don't want to buy or support Space Marine 2 because there's no playable female characters. Which, if you think about it, yeah, I mean, Space Marine 2 is definitely an anomaly coming from a Western studio, but of course, there's no playable women because, as you know, the Marines aren't women. This hasn't stopped some from demanding it, of course, as well. As one user said, that's kind of fascinating in a yeah, that tracks kind of way, but they really should just start adding female Space Marines if only because it would attract more women into the hobby. Well, that's stupid, isn't it? If the only way you can enjoy something is if you're represented, well, it's kind of lame. I've played plenty of games where I have to play as a woman, like Tomb Raider or Resident Evil, and I'm totally fine with it. And then you also have other games like Alien Isolation, which, man, that's a great game as well. I don't need to play a man in order to enjoy those games, but saying that Space Marine 2 needs women or the Marines in general is, like always, very stupid. Considering that there's other factions within 40k that are just women and women alone, and you don't see people saying, well, I would love to play the Sisters of Battle if it had men in it. No, they don't do that because things can be gender exclusive, which is totally fine. Another user then responded to that person before and said, how many more women joined the hobby for female custodies? Any data points to back this idea up in any way whatsoever? Of course not, and that's the point. And then there's another user who's been getting quite a bit of heat, and I can confidently say that they're only saying these things in order to stir people up and bait them, but here's what they said via Twitter. You have a multi-ethnic squad and a woman is in a position of military command. Space Marine 2 is woke. The comments are all over the place with this tweet, as you would expect, and the more I read about this person who originally said this was saying, it was pretty obvious that this post was meant as some kind of weird hybrid bait gotcha thing. Because look, Space Marine 2 is not woke, and it having diversity does not enforce those ideas. Even Fandom Wire chimed in on this, where they referenced someone in their article as proof of this. The tweet was sent by a user, and I may say this name wrong, but I think it's pronounced ENDYMION? Here's what Fandom Wire showed in their article from this user. Weirdos are attacking Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, saying that it has no diversity. Meanwhile, the trio in the campaign is a white guy, black guy, and an Asian dude. Keep seething freaks. I don't know about you guys, but this ENDYMION guy, he sounds like an idiot to me. They're just referencing anyone these days in these articles, aren't they? Whoever this ENDYMION guy is, I mean, I guess I agree with his opinion here. He's right that Space Marine 2 does indeed have 3 ethnically diverse Marines as its main cast. But this, of course, doesn't make it woke at all. In fact, it makes it just simply normal, because their gender, nor their skin color, are ever brought up during the campaign, as far as I can remember anyways. Charon pretty much just references how he used to fight orcs and how much he hates them. And then Gadriel spends the majority of the campaign being superstitious and not trusting Titus at all because he believes Titus is hiding his true intentions from the rest of the squad. See, the game would have been woke or activist driven if Charon told Titus he couldn't understand his position because he's never been black-skinned or something. But we know that in the Space Marines especially, that none of them could give 2 craps what any of them look like. You could have half your face blown off and replaced with cybernetics, nobody is going to care either way. To them, your nationality or your skin color is that you're a Space Marine, and that's the beautiful part of it. Of course, this doesn't stop morons from saying dumb things on the internet. For example, this person who said, is Warhammer 40k LGBTQ+ friendly? Hey y'all, really looking forward to this, but had a quick question. I'm not trying to start an argument about the lore or anything, I'm just curious if there are any of such characters represented in 40k, and would they be in this game? That would be a bonus. The answer, by the way, is no to everything that this person asked, and before you say anything, no, Warhammer is not LGBTQ+ friendly, and it is not friendly to anyone at all either, by the way. It's called Grimdark for a reason. The universe this game and everything else takes place in is a pretty horrible place. I think we can all agree on that. Warhammer isn't even white guy friendly because nobody is safe in this universe. After all, we're all just food for Xenos anyways, plus I wouldn't go looking for some fandom or franchise and then wondering if it caters to me before you can enter it. Why are you entering a fandom to not enjoy it yourself, but to see if it bends to your whims instead? That defeats the purpose of what a fandom even is. If you like something, just do it. You want to join 40k? Cool, go ahead. But I think what a lot of activists do, which is why we're in so much nonsense to begin with, is because they don't join these things because they're interested at first glance. Instead, they want to join it so that they can mold it into what they think it should look like. Take movies or TV shows, it's all the same thing. Remember He-Man on Netflix? They took what was about a muscly man fighting a skeleton sorcerer and then it's somehow turned into two lesbians having a cat fight and then saying sorry afterwards. If the only reason you want to join things is to change the thing so it looks like what you came from, it kind of defeats the purpose of getting there in the first place. Does that make any sense? Like, I don't play franchises like the Mana series because I want it to be more like Dark Souls. I play Mana games because Mana is its own identity that is unique to it. This is like some vegan walking into a barbecue place and saying, "Do you guys do vegan food? And if not, can you make me vegan food or I'll call you all racists and bigots?" Like, just go get your vegan food somewhere else and leave everybody alone. You don't see me walking into the Sims community and then demanding that they turn it into Final Fantasy, because not everything is made for you, and that's okay. Space Marine 2 is made for people who enjoy Giga Chads tearing aliens apart like salami. And The Sims is for people who love to play God and put small children into swimming pools and then removing the ladders. You all know who you are, you've all done it, don't lie to me. And then there's Concord, which was made for nobody, so I think going into 40k and saying is it LGBTQ plus friendly, it's just stupid. The same way all of these other people are mad that Space Marine's not having female variants, yet they conveniently ignore the entire battalions that are full of women instead. So it's not really that you don't want to enjoy what's been made for you already, it's that activists are not happy until everything conforms to what they want in the end ultimately. And the simple reason is because these sorts of people have lived their entire lives never being told no. Anytime they've demanded things like they would yell the buzzwords, "You're racist, sexist, yada yada yada." And then somebody would panic and then they would get their way in the end. And then they think, well, if everyone else has conformed to fit my needs, why shouldn't this as well? And this is, my friends, what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force. And it leads to what we now call the culture war. People are tired of meeting the demands of crazy people, and therefore, it has caused a stink. If you want to play Space Marine Electric Boogaloo, go right ahead, because absolutely nobody is stopping you from just enjoying it for what it is. But I do find it interesting that for a group of people who swear that gender is a construct, and that both sex and gender in fact do not exist according to them because their college professor who has 3 cats and no husband told them so, they get really bent out of shape when something doesn't have a certain gender or sex in it, huh? I mean, if these concepts are not real to begin with, then surely you can enjoy Space Marine 2, right? Because wouldn't those Marines not be male or female anyway, since none of that exists apparently according to you anyways? So couldn't you just enjoy the game for what it is, because what's between the legs of those Marines after all does not enforce or dictate who they are in any way, shape, or form to begin with? So why complain in the first place then? Make it make sense, please and thank you. Because to demand a game with male-only playable characters to have female characters, it kinda confirms that deep down in your rot-infested brain, that's underneath all of those SSRIs and selective programming that you've been conditioned to believe your entire life, that you do in fact agree that gender and sex is actually not a construct, and that there are biological differences between men and women after all. Oh, well that's interesting now, isn't it? The best we can do is you can just put a helmet on your Space Marine to hide their very masculine faces, I guess, and then just pretend it's a woman. Or you could just go and make your own game about it, since every other time the other side tells you to stop making everything woke, you all say the exact same thing. But anyways, that's where we're at right now with all of these activists that are demanding who or what from Space Marine 2. I personally don't think that none of it is going to happen, and that the game is a rare example of what happens when you actually give players what they want and stop catering to crazy people with multiple voices in their heads. The Western industry could learn from Space Marine 2, but will they? Or is this just an anomaly of what we can expect from Western developers in the coming future? I wonder where Space Marine 2 will be in a few months from now, but we can all rest knowing that the game has definitely sold way more copies than Concord ever will. You can be assured of that. Woke is dying, but let's finish with Henry Cavill. So Fandom Wire yet again had another article where they asked which character could Cavill play, and they believe that Henry Cavill would be perfect as Titus from Space Marine. I truly do wonder what you guys think would be a good choice for Henry Cavill if and when he actually decides on his character to play in the Amazon series. One user on Reddit said that Henry should play Eisenhorn, and another user replied with what Henry Cavill actually had to say about that. He said, "When you've got Valdor and Primarchs out there, it seems a shame to be a mere Inquisitor." Henry Cavill, when asked about playing Eisenhorn, "I imagine he'll want to play someone who is a constant presence in the setting, not someone restricted to a particular series." Of course, some users likely say, well, why not make him the Emperor of Mankind? Sure, I guess, but that's not really a character I think Henry would want to play. Considering, yes, there is a lot to work there, but the character is pretty confined to the throne. And of course, post Horus Heresy, he's not exactly in a speaking mood going forward. I think Henry would be a great fit for Titus, and I think it would be a good choice because obviously being a Space Marine would allow his character to move around the cosmos, getting into all sorts of trouble and being in the thick of things too. Or maybe Henry Cavill will be a new unique character that we've not seen before, which would then allow Amazon and Games Workshop the opportunity to use Henry Cavill as a first eyes look into that universe, if you will. And that way, nothing about his character is already foretold or expected of him. Because if he was the Emperor, right? If they did anything in these new shows or movies or whatever they end up making, and it doesn't adhere one-to-one to the rules of lore that's already been established, fans will of course get riled up about it. But if he's just a new character, maybe a new Marine or Inquisitor, then we have a blank slate to work with. And it doesn't mean that the universe around him can't adhere to the rules that are already established. There's nothing wrong with that. So in my personal opinion, I think that Henry Cavill, he should just be a new character. So it gives them the freedom to do what they want and allow his character, whether he's just a grunt on the front lines or someone higher up on the chain, the ability to actually do new things. And of course, the big plus would be that we wouldn't know the fate of his character either, which I think is a good thing as well. But I say no to the Emperor, just get someone who is like unknown to play the guy instead. They just gotta get someone that looks manly as hell, because I don't want some skinny old guy on the throne or something, but who knows, right? Anything is possible. The shows and whatnot on Amazon have only been in development for about 9 months as of the making of this video anyways. We could still very much be years away before anything gets even remotely done within this space. I just hope that they don't screw it up is all. But of course, if they do, you can bet your sweet butt cheeks I will let you know about it. But that's enough for now, I think. What do you think about all of this? Is Space Marine 2 an anomaly amongst Western releases? And do you think these activists need to just accept the game and hobby for what it is, without changing it, or do they have a point? Let me know as always. Thanks for watching, subscribe and all that stuff. Thanks to my patrons and members. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.